What is up, everyone? Train Freak here. And I've actually got a special guest down in the basement. But before I pull, oh Lord, I got another special guest in the basement too. So before I pull them both up, you can see on the side over here the weekly model railroad live streams. And I'm going to get into some hellos, which it looks like we've got 38 people here. Wow. That's pretty awesome. Let's see here. Let's add this person. Hey, Sean, Mr. Dak Man.
Hello.
And this person. Well, we don't have a face, but he's there. It's Ray Bobel from the Beauville and Newtown Model Railroad. Howdy, guys. How are y'all?
Oh, hanging in there.
I
Doing pretty
heard
good.
that. So let me get some highs going on. We got John from the Schuylkill River Valley, Ink Rails, Z Fantasy Trains, Cat Nuts at Southern Yankee Railroad. Inked Rails, that's Brian. We got Art with PDRR Engineer, Dwayne's Fork and Spoon, Joe Rader, Drew Dude's Model Trains, Shay Barker, Dwayne's Fork and Spoon Railroad, Pete Clark, Dwight Curley, Tyler, Lackawanna Rail Fan. Let's see who else we got here. We got Bang Got You Junction, Carl Braun, Wicked Insanity, Scott Johnson, Day BNSF in scale. And I'm looking to see if we got any more. I'm having to scroll backwards. Al Mars here. Let's see who else. I know a lot of people came in early. There's Rusty, Possum Bayou. We got William, New Fenris Railroad. Tim, CP368 Productions. Shane's Trains is here. Anthony Dodge, the Model Train Outsider, or Opa Dodge. We got Chris with Go Via or Go Home. Let's see who else we got. And that's the top of the list I'm seeing. I know Heath, Humanity Junction. I'm sure he's lurking in here somewhere. Let's see. Who else? I'm going back down. We got JD, Grandpa Rails, Roy Eltham's here. Let's see. Who else? All right. Can y'all hear me fine? Because I've been playing with a whole bunch of settings today. So.
Yep, you're coming in clear.
Awesome. So since we got all the hellos and out of the way, and I'm sure this is probably looped through a few times or whatnot. Yeah, right. I'm hiding. Don't call me out yet. Well, I just called you out. Deal with it, Heath. Georgia Sunbelt just popped on in too. So welcome, Anthony. All right. So tonight's topic is we're going to talk about era-specific trains. Not just the locomotives, but the rolling stock that you would have behind it. And since I'm not a highly keen on it, and this is something that I'm still trying to learn myself, that's why I brought Sean, Dackman Productions, in with me on this, because he knows a whole lot more than I do. John Arthur's here. Hey, John, welcome. Now, what number John is John Arthur? I can't remember. Is he 3, 4, 5, 6? I think 7's Mystic. So, can't remember. All right, so let me change the screen here, and that way y'all can see my arms and stuff. So, Sean, where do you want to start, man? You want to start with locomotives?
Yeah, let's start with locomotives. That sounds great.
Okay, well, let's go with some switchers. I've got 2 different ones, and I know there's many different models out there.
Oh, yeah, there's a ton of them.
Yeah. And I plan on getting more, just haven't done it yet. But at the bottom, I've got a GE 70 ton, if I'm not mistaken. And I guess that's probably one of the more modern GE switcher units, yard switchers.
Yeah, we're talking like 50s.
50s, okay. Mm-hmm. And then also I've got an EMD SW 1500 as well.
There you go.
Fred Wild's here. Welcome, Fred.
That's actually newer than the other one.
Okay. So, and one of the things that I've did or planned on my railroad is typically railroads in the 60s, 70s wouldn't be using these, but you could still find these like on an industrial spur or complex or sometimes a short line. I want to say one of the local railroads near me, it's called East Camden and Highland. That's what they use, or those little GE 70 tons, or something similar. I know Alco had some. I don't know what the models are. Baldwin had one too. What are you holding up, Ray?
I believe that would be an RS2. That's one of the Alcos.
Okay.
And the other one that I've got down here, I believe, is an RS3, and that's another Alco.
Now, originally, those RS units would have been on the road,
right.
Yeah, correct.
and then later were used for might have been used for yard switching.
Yeah, because I
We
think
got
the
no,
RS
go ahead.
actually stood for road switcher, if I'm not, but I'm not 100% sure on that.
Okay, hey, I did not know that. We got John 2618 here and Manny Fernandez as well. Now John Arthur is saying we got all the Johns here. There's still one John that I have not seen popped in, and that's Mystic Southern Railway. So, and of course TSG's not here, or I haven't seen him either unless he's lurking. Santa Fe Bob's here. Welcome, Santa Fe Bob. All right, and I'm going to make myself bigger. So now I know EMD had what was called a SW1. They also had a SW9 that had they called it a cow and a calf, and the calf was the cabless unit, and a lot of times you would see a pair of those together. Mr. Pictovit is here. Is that him? That's funny. There you go, Sean.
Yeah, he calls me the Ed McMahon of the model railroading.
That's awesome. All right, so those are the only two switchers that I have, and typically with a yard switcher, I don't really think anything is more or less era specific as to what was switching in and out of yards, because there's still a lot of short lines today that use this SW1500. So
Yeah.
just depending on what you're modeling would depend on, if that's something you could get by with on a modern railroad, if you're trying to be era specific.
And funny you mentioned the East Camden because they actually bought. I don't know if they still have them. Ex Rio Grande switchers.
I think you're right.
Years back, and they actually repainted them.
And when they originally painted them, they're all orange now, but at one point they had their whole fleet of switcher units a different color of the rainbow. So they had a red unit, an orange, a yellow, a green, and a blue, and I think they had a indigo, but I'm not quite sure. I do have a couple of their box cars, and there used to be a arsenal down there, and they still make ammunition, from my understanding, like missiles. Risden and Rome Railroad, welcome. I'm trying to keep an eye on to see how many people are popping in. All right, so let's go with the 1940s. I mean, I could go older. I do have a couple of steamers that are not in the best of shape. Right here with me, they're still boxed up. I mean, I could pull those out if you want to see them, but I figured we could start with the 1940s and kind of work our way a little more modern. And to start with, I've got a set of FTs, which would be your first gen F units.
Correct.
Now, these are in a paint scheme that a lot of people do not know about. Everybody thinks that every Cotton Belt unit was painted just like Southern Pacific's. But originally, they ordered 20 FT units, 5 sets of ABBAs that were in this paint scheme here. And so I got my hands on a pair. These are Stewart's. And originally, they were not connected with couplers. They were connected with a drawbar between each of the units. And they were all numbered the same number. And so this would have been locomotive 900A. That would have been 900B. Then there was a C and a D. And they were all connected with a drawbar. Now, eventually, SP did repaint these into Black Widows and actually replaced the the side piece, the steel on it, and made it look like F7s later down the road. But the only way to know those units is when they did get repainted, they had the drawbars changed to couplers, their numbers also changed. So the original order, the numbers were 900, 905, 910, 15, 25. The four numbers in between are the numbers that they were renumbered to. So this one would eventually be renumbered to 901. That one would have been 902. And all of the A units held an odd number. All of the even units held an even number. So that's something that a lot of people did not know. But these are strictly for freight. I don't think FTs ever were used for passenger.
Correct. And just another interesting fact about the FT is they used a unique gear ratio. So when they finally came out with the F3 unit, EMD came out with the F3, they could not connect, or MU, that is, an FT to an F3. So railroads like the Rio Grande just re-geared them to the same gear ratio so they could MU those.
And I think that's what the Cotton Belt and SP did as well on their FT units too. Because I know there was some pictures showing the FTs rebranded per se with some of the F7s that they had. So I would highly assume it.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So speaking of, I've got some F7s here, and I've got two sets. This set is not prototypical at all. So these are, of course, you can see Southern Pacific in daylight. Now, the thing about these are actually FP7s, which were F units that were used for passenger service. However, the SP never had F units in daylight. Cotton Belt only had one of them, and that was locomotive number 306, if I'm not mistaken. And of course, I've got another set here. I'm going to see if I can't try to get all four of these on here. All right. These are also F7s. So FP7s, F7s are the same length. They look exactly the same on the sides. Your difference is going to be on the top. So if I flip all these up, right here's your difference. So if you're curious to know if your F units are F7s or FP7s, or if they're F3s, F9s, whatever, these right here were steam generators that were added on later. Now, if you got an E unit, which I don't have mine with me, but it's basically the same thing, but 6 axles instead of 4, they would all be passenger ready because that's typically what the E units were used for, were passenger. F units were really used for freight. Now, the F does not stand for freight, unless I think it's Alco that made their units, Alco P's for passenger and F's were for freight. But for EMD, if we go back to the FT or the first generation F unit, the FT actually stood for 1,400 horsepower. And then the E's stood for 1,800 horsepower. So I thought that was a pretty cool, way that they named it. And then, of course, EMD changed it later, which we will get to. But another thing on some of the locomotives for prototypes, my Cotton Belt's got one headlight, my SP has two. And so nothing was exactly the same between those two railroads, even though the SP did own the Cotton Belt at that time.
Hey, Jason, you were talking about E units.
You got an E? All right, let me make you bigger. There you go.
That's cool.
So yeah, I have one.
I believe this is an E7.
Okay.
I mistakenly called it an E8 in the past, and I was cleaning things up the other night and realized that it's actually an E7. This is a Proto 2000 unit. But
that's what mine is. Mine's a E8/9 because the only thing that was different between the 8 and the 9 was something with the prime mover.
Right.
There was nothing physical on the outside that you could tell the difference of.
One of the neat things with this one here is the fact that the upper light on this is a Mars light, and it actually flashes back and forth when it's running.
SP did the same thing. The top light was a Mars, and the bottom light was
Constant on.
solid, constant on. And then if you had a consist with E units, it would have been an ABA, not a BBA like you would with the Fs. You would have the back locomotive would have its light, the bottom light dimmed, and the Mars would be off. So,
yes.
All right, let's move on to my next set of favorite locomotives. And of course, I know other railroads had some, similar to those F units. You had Alco that had the the F units.
Hey, Jason.
Yo.
Real quick, Anthony from the Georgia Sunbelt's got a quick question on what the difference was between a 7, 8, and 9. And I think that was really just the prime movers, wasn't it?
Well, it had to do with the generation of the locomotive. So the first one was FT, then you had F2, F3, F4. So it was just the generation release of it. But most of the time it had to do with either gear ratios, your prime mover.
Yep.
Some of the earlier E units only had 4 traction motors and not 6. The middle axle on both the front and back truck were just there for extra weight distribution.
Yeah, Alco did that.
So, and Alco did it too.
Yes.
So it was a lot of them. But I know another locomotive that would have been comparable to those would have been Baldwin made what's called the Shark. I don't know the exact model of it because the SP didn't have any of them. But that's another comparable locomotive, in that time era.
You talking about the RF-16 there, Jason?
Yeah.
The shark nose?
The shark nose.
That's what this one here is.
So Santa Fe Bob has a good comment here. And Ray, if you got your E unit back on hand, that might be something to look at real quick.
It does have square windows, so it's an E7.
Okay. I know mine has the round portholes.
Which means that it's an E89.
Right. So sometimes the generation difference could be with something the way the body is. I know when we get into the SD locomotives that I have later, I can explain a difference between a SD45T2 and a SD40T2. Which only a handful of railroads had those. All right. So here in front of me, I've got a GP9 and a SD9. So GP was for general purpose. SD was what? Specific duty or standard duty? Something duty.
It was severe duty, I believe.
What was it?
Severe duty.
So I can't remember. That one always gets me because there's so many different initials that an S could be for. Special duty, maybe.
Yeah. Special duty, yes, you're correct.
Special duty. Okay, there you go. Yeah. Which basically, besides the prime mover difference on the inside, was the axles. A GP or a Jeep, which would have been comparable to like an RS3, RS5, for example, for the Alco fans out there. I don't know if GE was really around much with locomotives back then besides the yard switchers. But typically your SDs would have a bigger prime mover on the inside. And for those who don't know what the prime mover is, that's the actual diesel motor that turns the generator that supplies electric, current to the traction motors on the axles. So that's why we call it a prime mover, is because you're talking multiple different motors, on a single diesel electric locomotive. So now the time period on these would be what, 50s?
50s, yeah, those 60s? Came out. They came out in the 50s.
Okay. And I love the high noses. Now, one thing to look at, and I'm going to see if I can get it up there, see if you can see it maybe. It's hard to tell, but right here by the ladder, there's a letter F. I don't know if it'll focus. Okay. Well, look on your locomotives, because a lot of them would have an F on the front side, which is mandated by the FRA, and it still is today. That would denote what is the front side of that locomotive. Depending on how these locomotives at the time were ordered for specific railroads, you could have the F on the short nose side or the F on the long nose. I know Pennsylvania was big on having what they call long hood forward as their standard direction. And the way the builder would have to change it is basically taking the cab and rotating it around. So that way your engineer is on the right side and your conductor would have been on the left side. But let's say, for example, and I've got some rolling stock here. I'm going to just grab this reefer and I'm going to couple, land on its side. So even though this is the front of my locomotive, the front of my train is over here. If it's going down the track, long hood forward. So there we go. So I hope that makes sense to people. And I actually had a DOT inspector explain that to me. Even though this is the front of your locomotive, once it connects to a cut of cars, now it becomes the back part of the locomotive actually becomes the front part of the train. And a lot of times that's why you see when they do consisting, they'll have them connected back to back. Or if there's multiple units, the units in the middle really doesn't matter. It's the units on both ends typically are back to back. Now that's not always the case today with the very modern stuff, but a lot of your older, 50s, 60s, 70s, even into the 80s, they did that. So Possum Bayou says the L&N ran their RS3s long hood forward. I knew there was a handful out there. I think Southern was another one too. A lot of the Eastern railroads did that. And they did it for a couple of reasons. One was for safety. So, if there was a crash, you're talking about the engineer being way back here if this is the front of the train versus the engineer being way up here and this is the front of the train. And then the other thing is during the transition period, you've had all these engineers that were used to driving these steam locomotives that, their boilers are this long. And so that's just what they were used to, and that's what they preferred. So some of the railroads would do that. Randall Ellison said Norfolk Western ran their long hoods forward too. It seems like most of the Eastern railroads did that. I don't know of many of the Western railroads at the time that did that. So,
yeah, I believe, and Fred just brought up something too. Yeah, I believe that the RSs were designed to run long hood forward to begin with.
Okay. Yeah, I believe so. Because I believe the F was actually on the long hood forward part of it.
Yeah, I was trying to see if either one of my RSs has got an F on it, and nope, there ain't one there.
Well, I know Cotton Belt and SP had RS units that were in what was called the Halloween scheme. It was solid black with just orange ends, and I know there's some at the hobby shop about 20 minutes away from my house. I don't want to pay for his prices though; his prices are high. But that's something that, I can look into to see where is the F on those locomotives.
One of the things I was just looking at with that unit you just put away there, Jason, the headlights being way up above the hood. I don't think I've ever seen a railroad do that before.
That is SP for you. Mars light, standard headlights. And they did that at first on most of their locomotives, and then on their newer models, they would actually have two sets of lights below, or actually the lights, instead of one being over, they were actually turned sideways. And you're actually going to see that here in a little bit because I got an SD40 the same way. All right. This one here was originally a high nose that got modified. And this is a short line that's no longer in business. And that was the Ashley Drurin Northern, which got bought out by the Arkansas Midland, which the Genesee and Wyoming owns Arkansas Midland now. All right, we got Mystic Southern Railway. Now John Arthur can say all the Johns are here that I know of. So this locomotive was originally a high nose. This is a GP18. When Ashley Drurin Northern got these, they actually cut the noses off. And that's because it ran more on a modern 1980s, 1990s era. So, all right. I got two more Jeeps, and of course we'll get into the rolling stock. I've got a lot to go through, and we're already 30 minutes in. How about that? All right, Ray, you want to guess what type of Jeeps these are? And if you want me to put them up on the side so you can see the tops, just let me know.
No, that's okay. I'm going to say probably one of them's a 38, maybe. And the other one might be a 20.
Well, you was close on this one. This one's a 35.
Okay.
60.
Okay. Well, I've got two rare. I've got one rarity sitting over there. I got a GP 30.
Okay.
If you want, I can go grab that.
It's very comparable to a 35. They were built around the same time, and so was a 38.
I think the EMD had a lot of problems with the electronics, where they put the electronics cabinet on the 30, so they moved some things around and then came back out with a 35.
There you go.
But interestingly enough, the GP60 would be the last EMD GP model that they would make.
And these are still ran today. So if you've got a very modern layout, Union Pacific has actually repainted almost all of the X Cotton Belt and SPGP 60s. And you can actually look at some of my railfan videos that I post on a monthly basis, and just, if you don't want to watch the whole video, that's cool. But you can go in there and see what trains, I put the different locomotive types in there. And if they were like an X, SP or X Cotton Belt or X CNW units, and the local that runs, through here 3 times a day uses X Cotton Belt locomotives. And they're all GP60s. So you can get away with that on a very modern layout. That looks like a GP20.
That's exactly what it is. This one is. This is the only GP20 I've got. And it's what's really fascinating with this, and I know it's hard to see on here, but underneath the numbers over here, they actually, Baltimore and Ohio actually put on there what locomotive it was. So gotcha. It's really not hard to screw that one up. But
so it looks like we got a couple more people jumped in. We got Nora, Jake, and then we got Corey's AKVR. They jumped on in, and I'm hoping I'm not missing anybody. So if I missed you from jumping in, you could say hi to me again, and I'll try to call your name out.
Somebody was just mentioning how unique the GP30s were, and if you remember, we were at Heath or was it Rick put up that video of the Cumberland Yard out in Western Maryland where they had all the decommissioned locomotives sitting, and I was like, yeah, I was looking at that, and I could see a bunch of these because these are really easy to find. As what it is, that's a 30. And the way you could tell was the way that this top was set up. It's very distinctive. But as somebody had mentioned, yeah, these apparently the railroads didn't like. They had issues with these.
Yeah.
So-
We got Leamington Station here too.
Yeah.
So awesome.
Were you guys aware that there were actually 2 cab variations of the GP30?
No, I did not know that.
The 20 had a high nose and a low nose, didn't it?
Yeah, I'm not talking about that kind of variation, though.
Okay.
So the GP30, there was 2 cab variations. One had an extended cab on the fireman side, and then some of them didn't. So there was actually more room for a fireman on certain GP30s. Certain railroads ordered them that way.
Okay. That's very cool. We got Train Fan 120 here too. So Scott Johnson says he's got the SP Kodachrome GP20 and a Cotton Belt GP20. Cotton Belt did have GP20s. And the Kodachrome, so Scott, does yours say SP, SF, or SPSF? I'm just curious to know. All right. So that's all of my 4-axle units that I wanted to show today. Now, I do have a GP38-2 as well. Hey, we got Robert Flying Crow here as well.
Hey, Jason, you had mentioned that you were a little short on Alcos.
Yeah.
I got to flip my screen back here. That was one of those U-boats that I was telling you about. Of course, now I have a hard time trying to figure out which one of the U's this actually was.
Now, wasn't the U-boats GE?
Yes.
I thought they were okay. Maybe, all right.
Yep, they were
No,
GEs.
they also made the Century, like the 634 Century. The
Right.
U-boats were all General Electric. The U-25 to U-33 were all GE locomotives.
Yeah, I know. I've got a couple of. I know I got a couple of the U-boats, but this one here is one of the ones that was still on the layout because the other ones are in repair.
So John Arthur has a very good question. What makes a 38-2 versus just a 38? The 38-2s I know were rebuilt. I don't know exactly if they, I don't think they replaced the prime mover. Maybe
Prime Mover
traction
had more
motors?
horsepower.
What was it, Sean?
The Prime Mover had more horsepower on the 38-2.
Okay. And a lot of people are saying the electrical system as well. They upgraded that. So Scott says that his locomotive was a Santa Fe that he re-decaled it to SP.
Okay.
Well, Scott, all you had to do is add the SP to the front of it, and you could have a SPSF. Just make it like the merger actually went through, and the ICC didn't say, nope. Sparky's here, and he is saying the same thing. The 38-2 had, whoops, wow, the chat moved up on me. The 38-2 also had electronics upgrades. And Tim is saying that both are 2,000 horsepower.
I was thinking of the GP40 probably then.
Yeah. Because I know there's a GP40 and a GP40-2.
Yeah.
All right, so this one I'm going to hold because I don't want to break the visors on the side. And this one actually has armrest right under the window, so I don't want to break this one. So this is an SD40, and it's in daylight scheme. And this one, along with another locomotive, which I think was a U-boat, and I could be wrong, but there was only 2 diesels that in this modern era that was painted in daylight, and it was to be helper units for when the SP 4449 made its run from Portland, Oregon down to San Francisco, California, I think. And you can actually see some pictures on these. But, I mean, this is just a standard SD40. So the difference between this and the Jeeps is you're talking about 2 extra axles and a bigger prime mover. This one here would actually have a 16. It's a V16 diesel cylinder or piston diesel.
Yeah, it has an
engine.
EMD 2-stroke 16-cylinder.
Yeah. Now, they did have some locomotives that had 20s, which I've got one I'm going to show you here in a minute. But the radiator is all up in the top on your standard SD40s. Now, there were SD40Ts or tunnel motors. So I've got that locomotive here. This is actually a 45. But the air intake's at the bottom instead of the top. So I don't know if y'all can tell that or not. Now, as far as the tunnel motors go, there was only two types, and that was the SD45T-2 and the SD40. And I know there's like a smaller Jeep that has a tunnel motor as well. But, and this is really hard to tell. Here we go. So here you can see there's actually 3 spots for radiator fans. That tells you it's an SD45T2. If it only had 2, it's an SD40. That's your only difference between those two locomotives. These locomotives would have been ran in the 70s and 80s. I know this particular one got wrecked in 1980 and they scrapped it, but I want to say they ran these to the mid 80s and possibly into the early 90s. I don't think so. I'm thinking probably mid 80s. You know anything about that, Sean?
Not that particular locomotive. No, I don't.
Okay. So, but this one, this is my bicentennial one. The rest of them are all painted bloody nose. And my horn's trying to come off on that one. And then I've got one more locomotive that is the most modern that I run on my layout. And it is the Dash 9. Which this is a GE locomotive. It's a AC44 CW, I think. Now, they did have the 2-axle locomotives that were called a Dash 8. Or 4-axle locomotives that were called a Dash 8. But this one is the Dash 9. And these were built in 94. And so you could run these on your layout, and I still see them ran today. You know, in some of my rail fanning videos, I've actually caught them. Now, you're not going to find one that says Southern Pacific unless it's UP patched. So, but yeah, these were built in 94. Yes, so train fan is exactly right. And only one of them was a cotton belt bicentennial. And ironically, they still put SP on the nose, even though it was cotton belt. The rest of the locomotives that were cotton belt would have SSW on the nose. I thought that was weird. And they even put it on the back end too. SP.
Oh, yeah.
But now the other two bicentennial units, the U-boat, and there was a smaller, I think it was a GP40P. It was, they all said Southern Pacific on the side. They didn't say cotton belt. That was the only one that said cotton belt.
You
And
took your, sorry for interrupting, but you took your SD45 away too soon because that's the one that has a 20-cylinder in it.
Yes, this one does have a 20-cylinder prime mover in it.
So that's,
and so if
first time that EMD was using a 20-cylinder.
Yeah.
45.
That is correct. Even the SD40 T-2s had 20-cylinder engines in it. All right, let's see. Anybody else come in? I haven't seen anybody else. So,
Hey, Jason,
All
you
right.
were talking about the most modern locomotive that you have on your layout. Well, that would be this dude for me.
And what is that one?
That's a BQ 23.7.
Okay.
And
Baldwin, or is that Alco?
you know what? Give me a second. Go into my
Well, while you're looking that up, we're going to go into rolling stock.
yeah, go ahead.
What about cabooses? I know a lot of people call them cabooses. It's cabooses. I'm getting that out there now. It is cabooses. Even
Caboose.
Webster Merriam says cabooses. I know this will be Sparky's favorite section. All right, so I brought 3 in front of me because I don't have the 4th model that I would like to demonstrate.
It's actually a GE unit.
It's a GE. Okay.
Yep.
So here I've got a cupola wood side boxcar. This is a C30-1 in SP. These were probably the first gen of cabooses out there. I mean, with it being wood, I would think so, right?
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people, if they don't know what these little bars, I don't know if y'all can see them or not. There we go. They were actually cables that were designed to keep tension on the caboose. If you was to ask me how, I would not be able to tell you. Sean, do you know?
I'm not exactly sure myself, but I know a lot of your woodside freight cars, not just the caboose, but the woodside refrigerator, also had what they called truss bars.
Yes. And even some of the older wooden passenger cars, like the heavyweights, had them too. Because I know they're trying to restore an old RPO from like the 1890s that's got them on there. So now I've got the steel version, and this might be a Container Man's alley because of what it says. Trailer flat car service, which is the first form of intermodal out there before they did containers. And this is a C43. So it's really not much difference between a C31 and a C43 except for the windows. I mean, it's the same design. Now, I know some railroads would have a cupola in the center versus on the end. And the people that would ride in these cabooses, originally you have what's called your rear brakeman. Your conductor would ride in there, and then you'd also have another person called a train man. And this was the conductor's office. Some railroads would actually assign specific cabooses to specific conductors. Cotton Belt was one of them. Now, I don't know if the SP did that or, the other railroads, but I know Cotton Belt was notorious for it. And I don't see anything as far as like a build date on these. So I can't tell you exactly when they were built. All right. My last caboose I've got. And I've got 2 more just like these, but these are your standard bay window. So typically the other purpose of the caboose is to watch out for what they called hot boxes. Before roller bearings, they had the axles in the truck would have, grease. And sometimes if that grease got hardened and it dried out, it would catch on fire. So a lot of the railroads changed to the bay windows because they could see along the side of the train a lot better than your standard cupola. So it just gave a better vantage if I change it that way. There you go. So the little window right there. The actual prototype to this one here is in the Arkansas Railroad Museum, and if it ever opens back up, which I know it will one of these days when the showstopper's gone, I want to take this model down there and actually do a real comparison. I thought that would be really cool. Now this is a C55, and it says this one was built in 74. So this would be your typical caboose until the days of there's no more cabooses. Now I know there's still short lines that use them. I've seen Union Pacific use them on a couple of locals, like very short locals. They've got this one Mopac caboose that they use down in the town I grew up in, and it's, I guess it's called what, a shoving platform.
Yeah, shoving platform. Yep.
Yeah, and so I've still seen them use that one, but you don't see these anymore riding the rails. Um, there's a whole bunch of cabooses that are in towns where there used to be railroads, and there still are tracks, but you can't get into them. They got them all locked up due to people, vandalizing and whatnot. All right, so I'm seeing one of the Anthony's left. I don't know if it was Opa Dodge or if it was
Dodge.
Opa Dodge. Okay. We will see you next time. Okay. I'm totally missing something in the chat. All right. So, are you looking at getting an FP7 in the Southern Pacific scheme that Walters is releasing on February the 28th? Is what paint scheme is that in? Because I have not looked. If it's in the Bloody Nose, I will definitely considering it. If it is in Daylight, I will not get it. Considering that I've already got a total of 4 FP7s that are in the wrong paint scheme, that all are going to get repainted and redecaled. So Grandpa Rails is saying that they use a shoving platform in Oxnard, California as well.
Yeah, basically, somebody was asking what a shoving platform is, and in fact, Virtual Railfan has a tendency to catch them from time to time. What they'll do is if they've got a long backing move, they'll have the caboose on the opposite end and the conductor standing out there with a light so that they know that the train's coming from that direction. The other thing is that they'll use them for is if they've got locomotives on either end, they'll go ahead and they'll sometimes use them as a buffer.
Yes.
I've seen that done once or twice too, and that's basically what they mean by a shoving platform. It's just keeping the train safe, I guess, for lack of a better term.
So the one that I actually seen in person, they actually bolted some chairs on both ends on the outside.
I tell you, years ago, I saw a video where they had where one of the railroads, and I'm trying to think, it may have been the Milwaukee, had actually taken old flat cars and literally put a cabin in the middle of the flat car, and that was their shoving platform.
Yeah, there's actual FRA regulations that say if they're going to shove a train a certain distance, they have to have, like you said, that conductor or the shoving platform on the end of the train.
Yeah, it's basically just there to protect the train.
Yeah,
right. And it's also safer for them to ride on that shoving platform than to be hanging off the side of some other type of rolling stock.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So,
which I've seen them do that a few times too, but like you said, those are usually short moves. But if you get a long backing move, then they'll throw a caboose or a shoving platform, on the end of the train, and they'll have the conductor stand back there with a light, even though there's lights on that car.
right.
They still have the conductor stand back there and let everybody know, hey, train's coming.
Well, and they also used to have a whistle on there too. And so if the train was doing a shoving, you could actually have someone blowing that whistle from the caboose with grade crossing signals and whatnot. All right, let's. I guess gondolas. I mean, they're pretty simple. Typically, these are all beat up on the side of the railroad. I don't really think there's really any changes as far as gondolas because I still see these going up and down the rails today.
I think the
they're
only thing
probably
that's
not.
changed is the size.
Yeah,
They're not 40 footers. They're more like that, like a mill gondola.
Yeah,
And this one
no,
here is actually a covered one.
yeah, no gondolas were 66 foot long.
Yeah. So I've got these 40 footers that I used for the older trains. I mean, this one here says it was built in 57. This one here was built in 40. So, and then of course, this one here says it was built in 59.
So that has to be a 50. That's probably a PS1 then. So
It
that would put
does
that.
not say. Of course, this is an older, I think this is an older blue box.
Yeah. So that's probably really a 50-foot gondola. I'm thinking if it was in the 50s, and it's probably like a Pullman standard PS1.
Yep,
Well,
50
not
footer,
PS1,
50 foot
the-
box car. Actually, that's a reefer, but still.
I think it's PS5 actually, not PS1.
Okay.
I think PS1's a box car.
And of course, what I thought was so cool about these covered gondolas, they would remove the roofs. And if you're wondering what I used with spare rail, throw them in a gondola. It adds extra weight.
Yeah, gondolas, and then Heath was asking the question, but gondolas carried everything.
Oh,
I mean,
anything and everything.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
and a lot of the gondolas, they actually use them in scrap service, which
They
meant that
still
they
do.
beat the living heck. I mean, you'd see the sides of the cars would be all warped. The side frames would actually, bow out a little bit.
They still do today. So there's a scrap company called Tenenbaum out of North Little Rock. They've got satellite locations all over the state. And with their main location being in North Little Rock, a lot of their satellite locations, when they get full, they will send that scrap to the North Little Rock location to be sorted. Because they have a big shredder with different types of magnets that can separate all the different metals. So I see that on the local all the time. Now, there was another day I saw it was a unit train of some type, and it was nothing but gondolas, and it was carrying, I think it was empty. It was empty at the time. But I've seen them carry railroad ties, pipe, coarse scrap metal,
Steel
I mean,
coils.
they would carry any and everything. Wheels, for sure.
Yeah.
I made a wheel load for one of mine that is removable. Now, the way to know if that gondola is designed for wheels is they would actually set rails on the inside because the railroads did not like those wheels setting on the flanges. So if you ever do make a load for a flat car or for a gondola that you put your railroad wheels in, they have to be sitting on rail. So it's not a FRA thing. It's more of a railroad company thing.
Makes sense. Yeah, it's funny.
Right.
It's funny you mentioned the scrap yards. We were talking about the scrap yards, but that's what's going to be out in here in front. And there's two gondolas sitting there where, oh, there they are. I've got two that are coming in, and I've got two sitting there that are waiting to go out.
There you go.
All right. Yeah. Nice.
Now, Ray, where's Blackjack?
He just left.
Oh, is he on the other end of the layout?
Yeah, he's on the other end of the layout. He's pulling the outer loop.
Oh, okay. Okay. I was going to get on to you if you're running that Tuscan red one and not Blackjack.
No, heck no. You know darn right well if I was going to hop up here, Blackjack was going to be on the screen.
Now, if you're a Pensy fan or Penn Central or Conrail, of course you had the GG1, but the SP never had the GG1. So
Yeah,
I know Ray and Heath are.
Yeah, we kind of touched on that when was it? The other week when we had the other side with the electrics. The straight
Yes.
the straight electrics were, a lot of those were used on the Northeast corridor from Washington D.C. up to Boston, Massachusetts. And that was the fact that with the East Coast, with everything being so close and so tight, and a lot of the railroads, literally, there's Blackjack.
Yep, there he is. So, Container Man mentioned something about the axles. Take the axles off and lay them flat. I'll hold a load of train wheels that way. So, I have seen them, when they decommission railroad wheels, they will actually cut the axles off the wheels and haul it as a scrap load. So, I have seen that done.
Yeah, there's
Steve 87th just came on in. He says, I'm late. Well, better late than never. So
I know that
would
there's
do
a
that.
manufacturer up in outside of Milwaukee that was a part of the Milwaukee Road, and they do nothing but repair wheels and axles. And they actually pair when a wheel set comes in. They actually take them apart. And they make sure that the axles are still good, and then they'll put a brand new set of wheels on, and they'll take the old ones and send them out to be melted down.
Oh wow!
That was one of the Dream Plan Build video series years ago, Jason. I'll have to see if I can't dig that up. It was really it was unique.
Well, I've seen a company in the town that I grew up in, and for y'all that don't know, it's Pine Bluff, Arkansas, which is one of the Cotton Belt's major hubs back in the day. But there was a company in the old yard and one of the old buildings. I don't remember which shop it was. I think it might have been the car shops or the coach shops. But they made railroad wheels, modern day. And of course, there was just rows of track with wheels on them and even stacked, and how they stack them is pretty neat too. But they all put them on flats and gondolas. And that was kind of, 90s, early 2000s until they went out of business in the mid 2000s. So, do I have any locomotives made by Rapido? No, I do not. Unfortunately, I do not. Heath, I'm sorry, but Bald Knob is not a big railroad town. It's just where the Memphis Y connects to the Hoxie subdivision. That's all it is. Now, they got a really cool hobby shop there, and the guy who owns it is an ex-federal DOT inspector who was assigned to the railroads. So if you want like good knowledge or good railroad stories, he is the guy to talk to. Okay, so we are already going on an hour, which we typically end an hour, and we haven't even made it to the boxcars yet. So, Sean, you feel like going, or you want to?
Sure, let's go for it.
Let's go for it. All right. So I got tank cars, and of course I've got 3 of the original 40-foot with what they call the welded frame. Oh, here we go. Now I've got a gasoline. Let me get rid of Container Man's comment. There we go. Now you can see my gasoline one. So this would be hazmat. So, there we go. Let's just drop it. FRA would recommend or require what, 4 buffer cars on this one, or
for gas?
for gasoline?
Yeah, it's 4 buffer cars, but they count locomotives as a buffer car and a half. So if you're running like 4 locomotives, then a couple of them would count as a buffer car. So that's why you only see 1 buffer car sometimes when you see string of ethanol cars.
Gotcha. Yes, John, that was a hazmat spiel. All right. So this one actually goes my maintenance away. This one rides close to my crane, and that's because it's a water car. So, or could act as a tender, but this one would not require any type of buffer cars or anything like that.
No.
I had someone say, "Nope, go ahead."
I just wanted to point out those are framed tank cars, which would put them like in the 50s.
Yes. Now, with maintenance away, they did use those later, but not for revenue service.
Correct.
And of course, this one does not say when it was built. Lovely. But yeah, 40s and 50s, definitely you would see these type of cars. Now, this one might have went later on the railroad, and that's because its reporting marks are the Department of Defense. So sometimes the U.S. government never really followed the rules. They
never
always
do.
had an do what?
They never do, even when it comes to trucks. They can run
Yeah.
trucks with pollution standards on them.
So yeah, we're just gonna leave it at that. So you could have probably seen a DODX car, that was made for the 40s and 50s, running the 70s. They're the only ones that have like the exception to the rule. All right, so this would be more your typical modern tank car and what you would still see around today. And let's see, this one was built, looks like 85. Yeah. And if I can't see it, I always have a magnifying glass to help.
Can I pull one down real quick? I want to show
Sure.
the viewers one.
Yeah.
I've got a rarity too.
Ooh, the pickle car.
Yeah, it's actually vinegar.
Yes. Well, they called it a pickle car because what it pickles right in. I'm going to pull Ray's up real quick since he's right there. There we go.
Yeah, it's actually labeled for the Heinz company. Now, one of the other things that, and I'm not sure if Dagman's ever seen anything like, I have yet to be able to see if there's actually a prototype for something like that.
No, I haven't seen anything like that yet.
This is an old model, so this is an old car.
I know there is a prototype for a 3-dome tanker, but I don't know about a 6-dome.
Leave it to the Dow Chemical Company and AHM to come up with something unique,
Yeah.
I mean, unless they're transporting 6 different type of chemicals simultaneously. I mean, that's what your 3 did.
Yeah.
All right, Dak, man, what you got?
All right, so I have this tank car here. I know it's
That is
gauge.
very modern.
So this is as modern as you're going to get. It has the shields on the ends, which are now required by the FRA. So on both ends. So if the couplers disconnect, it doesn't. It's supposed to prevent the couplers from going through the tank body itself. But according to railroad engineers and railroad people, this design really doesn't work as well as they thought it was going to. So I guess it's back to square one. Also, your modern day tank cars and from even the ones from the 80s and early 70s were required to have Type F double shelf locking couplers on them. So they had a very unique. The tank cars have a very unique coupler on them, and if you were to look at it, which they didn't copy on these, but they have like a cover that goes over top of this, so you can't see it. That keeps it locked in place. So I guess what happens is if these ever get into a derailment, the design of the coupler is not supposed to let it break or disconnect in a derailment.
Right.
It's supposed to stay connected so it doesn't smash and puncture all the tank cars.
Right, which could leak hazardous material.
Yeah, but I just wanted to show this because this is about as modern day as you're going to get.
Yeah, that's the only thing that's not on my corn syrup tank car is those shields on the end. Now I did go and retrofit all of my tank cars, which I know with these 3 it's not prototypical, but I do have the shelf style couplers.
Yeah, cool. Who makes them, by the way? Oh, Katie?
Yeah, Katie makes them. Now, I don't know. I'm not sure if Katie makes them in O scale or not. So I'm totally unaware. But yeah, it does lock them in. So that's what we got for tank cars. I mean, tank cars are pretty simple. They carry liquids, whether it's hazmat or not hazmat. Now, as far as your buffer car rules for hazmat, if it's a unit train, they only need one buffer between the locomotives and or cabooses, if there is a caboose on it, depending on the area you're running. If it's a mixed unit train, then they have to have at least 4 buffer cars between. A buffer car could be really any type of rolling stock, box car, cover hopper. I don't think anything with a shiftable load counts, though. I think it has
Correct.
to, and not just the locomotives and cabooses. You can't have you have to have so many buffer cars between a tank car and a shiftable load as well.
Yep.
Speaking of shiftable loads, let's go with the flats. And I got to stretch way over here to grab these. I didn't bring a flat, but I did bring a bulkhead. There's your shiftable load right there. And that's why they would have these bulk ends on there. And I guess these were built, 60s, 70s originally starting out?
Yes.
So definitely you're not going to have these behind F units. But it was designed so that way if, it derails, or they have to slam it into emergency, it prevents this load from shifting into the next car. These you would carry lumber, sheet metal, pipes of all type, whether it's cast iron, concrete, you name it. And then the other flat car I've got, the center beam. And these, you have it. If you're going to have these on your layout and you're running operations, your loading and unloading zones, you need platforms on both sides because they had to be loaded evenly on both sides. Otherwise, it had a high center of gravity, meaning it would tip very easily. So, just something to note on that. Center beams, I don't know, what, 70s?
Yeah, I would have to look that up myself on that one.
Let me see if I can see an easy build date on here. And of course, I'm not seeing it. I know my TTX one's got it where I can easily see it, but this one I can't. This is an Arkansas, Oklahoma that they lease to the Tobacco Valley Lumber Company. So, okay. All right, let's go up Container Man's alley. And we're going to start with flats. 2 types of flats. Slide those there. There we go. So I did bring a flat. Piggybacks, or otherwise known as TOFCs, which stands for trailer on a flat car. Let's see, build date on this one, 54. So 50s. You can run these on the 50s, 60s. I think Sean was telling me that typically a railroad car would only last 50 years in service.
That's the actual rule, FRA rule. They're only supposed to have them on the rails for 50 years, and then whether they've been rebuilt or not, they got to pull them and scrap them.
Yeah. So there you have it. So I just noticed something on the trucks on these. These are actually set with the hot boxes. I'm going to zoom in on that. See if the light will show. I don't know if y'all can tell or not, but the hot boxes are right there. So this is a car that doesn't have roller bearings. But on your TOFC cars, typically if they needed to use it for something else besides 18-wheelers, this would theoretically lay down flat. And then they could put a container on there. And that's why your long containers had this smooth spot. So they lay the fifth wheel hitch flat. You could slap a container right on top of it. Now, if you were carrying 20 footers, they would just center it in the middle. So, for those who didn't know, now you know. All right, so later on, and I would assume probably the 70s.
Take it easy, Carl.
All right, Carl, take care, bud. Oh, we got My Life tracks here too. Articulates that basically do the same thing. And I have seen these carry both containers on a modern railroad and, of course, your piggybacks too. Now, somebody was asking me if I had cotton belt trailers in one of my videos earlier in one of the comments. So I have a whole slew of these. And I've got 2 sets of these articulates. But I want to say these, let's see, what was the build date on this one? I know one of them says it when it was built.
Now that's a spine car set, correct?
Yes. And it's made by FMC. They called them Impacts. And it's actually got the Impact logo. If it'll ever zoom or focus. There we go. But yeah, they called them Impacts.
Take it easy, Fred.
But yes, it is a spine car. And I want to say these came out in the 70s. Yep. Maybe the late 60s. I'm not 100% on that. But it was considered that a 5-unit or a 3-unit was considered one car on the train. And then, of course, we get to the more modern stuff. Like in the 80s.
There you go.
You get your well cars. So originally, these did carry containers, but they came out with the well car so that way they could double stack them to get more containers transported, simultaneously.
The only issue is, and I know we've talked about this before, was the fact that in some areas they can't double stack them because they can't get them through the tunnels.
That is correct. So now, if you're using a NMRA gauge, you have to make sure that you use the most modern. I think it's the Mark 4B, because it's made a little higher so that way you have your tunnel clearances for these. They are a little taller than an extended height boxcar, which was your highest clearance thing. But well car, and of course, if you notice, this one has 5th wheel hitches. So this one could do a 40-footer, or I could put in 220s and have them back to back. Now I do have that new articulated set that Ian from the Lehigh River subdivision got me, but they're the 40-footers, and it's an articulated set. I don't think they came out with the articulates till the 90s. Now, whether they were still the 48-footers or 40-footers, I don't know. And ironically, on that set there, it has the bill box and it says BLT, and they left the date empty. So I don't have a bill date for it. And I'm not finding a lot of information on that stuff. All right. Here we go. Is Rick Bailey still in the house? Or did he ever come in?
Rick at all tonight.
Well, this is up his alley.
It's the reason why it's so quiet in here. Uh-oh.
Like I said, this is up Rick's alley. Since he's our resident tree expert. All right, so the bottom car that I have is called a pulpwood car. Then I have a 40-foot wood chipper hopper. And then I have I don't know, that's what, 60 feet? Easily? Yeah, 60 feet wood chip hopper. Pulpwood cars, they used these back in the steam era. And I would say they used these all the way to what, the 60s, 70s, maybe? You
Yeah.
typically would not see these on a modern day railroad. And I would show you what the load would look like, but it hasn't came in yet. I actually ordered a load for this. But they did not put the logs long ways. They actually cut them to the width of the car, and they would stack them in. And so as they were going down the road, or the track, you would actually see what they cut. So this is funny. Oh, it moved up on me. There we go. Rick the arborist. So Dakman, if you don't know about that, I encourage you to go and watch the holiday show that was on my channel for December, and you would see Rick dressed up as a Christmas tree for Christmas
Oh,
with a golden star on his forehead.
wow.
And it was hilarious. Everybody just gave tree jokes all night long. Yep. See, just like Ink Rail said, you could cut Rick to the core. So. All right. So, wood chip hopper. A lot of railroads would use these, and because wood chips are so light, they added on, your standard hopper, they would add on to it because wood chips are very, very light compared to ballast and stuff. This was built in 49, so this would be during your steam era, late steam. Do you know if they used anything earlier than that, Sean?
I'm not sure if they used anything earlier than that, but you are correct. Railroads would take any kind of aging equipment that was, doomed for scrap or worn or whatever was wrong with it, and then turn it into wood chip hoppers, like a box car. They would cut the roof off of it and roll the doors shut, stuff like that. Um, I've seen hopper cars like that's an offset hopper you have there, but there's railroads had built their own variations of woodside, wood chip hoppers.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen them take gondolas and do the same thing where they just extended the sides of them all the way up to accomplish the same thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know, but I don't know if you can tell because it's got heavy weathering, but it looks like there's a rib right along here.
Yep.
There's a ridge on it. So they probably, same thing with this. This is an FMC car. But it's a wood chip hopper. Build date 75. So this is when it was built. So don't know much else about it. It looks like the AAR code on it is GT. So I don't. GT be a GB's gondola.
Like a gondola.
So, and I'm not talking about Grand Trunk Western. I'm talking about where this one, your typical hopper would be HT as your AAR code. This is actually an HTS, and that's because the top was extended. And East Coast Railfanning Productions. I don't think I've called your name, so welcome. And I know we're still running long, and we haven't got to everybody's favorite rolling stock yet. I'm trying to get through all the oddities first. All right, let's see here. Well, and if we're talking about, almost lost one. Here's an example of an open hopper. And that's a 4-bay, but it's supposed to be coal. And I actually bought this for $5 at a train show years ago.
4-bay, that would probably make a 100-ton hopper then?
I think they were trying to make it coal, like a coal hopper. I mean, it looks like little bitty pea gravel, and they spray painted it black. and then of course they weather the car. But man, I don't know how old this car is. This is one that's got the coupler boxes mounted on the truck. I think it's an old Bachman. It might be a Model Power or a Tyco. I don't even have a box for it. But I was like $5 for a weathered car. I mean, you can't go wrong with that.
No, not at all.
Even if it did have horn hooks and plastic wheels.
Hey, Jason,
Yo.
that car that you had, that large brown Southern Pacific hopper or wood chip car that you had, I just looked it up on the on one of the things that I had here. You said that was a GT.
Yeah.
According to the AAR, a GT is a hinged side gondola.
Hinge side gondola. Okay.
Believe it or not, but years ago I went ahead and copied off a whole bunch of stuff from the AAR just so I know what the heck I was dealing with.
Well, why don't you send me that list when you get a chance?
I could certainly do that.
Because then that means I got to get in there and fix some of my car cards. All right. Stock cars. Sean, this one was built in 37.
Yeah,
Probably cars on my lot.
stock cars were pretty popular in the very early on, 1800s into the 30s.
Ray, just for you, I did not bring the sheep or the cattle. This one has not been retrofitted with sound yet. Yet.
Sorry, I had to milk it for what it was worth.
I get it. So Sean, you know more about these than I do, so I'm gonna let you take over on this one.
Well, the stock rail cars were just basically something that they needed to transport livestock in, whether it be cattle was the most common thing. They did put horses in them as well, but there was unfortunately there was a lot of animals that either were died along the way, whatever have you, but. So they changed the rules on the stock cars to the point where for every so many miles they had to stop and let the animals rest. And so I have printed out some stuff here that I'm looking at, but as I'm telling you guys this, so I keep myself straight. So they were. Let me get to the point here. So they were introduced, looked like in late 1800s. They were very popular up until well into the 50s and 60s. But unfortunately with the strict regulations that were put on them, I'm not 100% sure on this, but I believe that the railroads thought they were not very profitable after those restrictions were put on them, and that's why you don't see them today. At least not a lot of them, anyway.
Oh, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah,
And
so
they've even had some that would carry chickens too.
yeah, chickens. That was another one. So, like for example, in 1880, American railroads rostered 28,600 stock cars. So they had a lot of them very early on.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, if you run like really old steam era, like say Civil War era, they had stock cars that didn't even have tops on them. If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I'm not sure on that.
But you're talking 1800s. I mean,
Yeah.
I
But
don't.
the other thing that hurt the stock car is that they decided to, for the cattle part of it, when they made or started building the refrigeration car, they just, a lot of farmers that are cattle farms that had these would just pretty much slaughter their own, and the railroads just need to pick them up, pick up what they actually slaughtered and cut up for meats.
There you go.
So yeah.
So it's like the stock cars went away, and then the reefer cars just built up.
Yeah, because of like I said, the regulations was just killing the railroads. So they it went around to the more profitable. It was more profitable for the cattle people to. There you go. That's it right there. So
Yeah.
yeah, DNT made the cattle haulers to stop every so many hours to give them rest, food, and water. So that's what the railroads were doing. And so rather than doing that, the a lot of your cattle farmers were doing on-site butchering and slaughtering, and then all you needed was a reefer car. So you'll find a lot of trucks, like the container man saying, most of your poultry and cattle and stuff like that are all hauled by trucks now.
Well, and see, I know like Pine Bluff used to have a stockyard, and they might still do. I don't know if it's active or not. That the
Yeah,
railroad used to serve years ago, and then of course with those restrictions, I never got to see it. You know, in the railroad serve it in person, but I have seen truckers carrying like rough stock for rodeos and whatnot. So
you want to see how they carry chickens. You might not want to eat any.
there's chicken plants. I've seen the truckers carry that, and if you're on a highway, you might as well just pull over and wait 15 minutes and let the truck get way up ahead of you. So that way you ain't got to carry that smell.
Down here on the eastern shore of Maryland. So yeah, I've seen how they it's it's a little foul.
Yeah, more like a lot of foul. All right. So we're almost done. We've only got 3 more categories left. And I know this is one of Sean's favorites. Don't you move.
Oh, that's a swine there, cat nuts. Oh, refrigerator cars. So we've gone from the raw beef we've gone from the raw log meat to the raw dead meat.
There you go. But some of them used it for fruit.
Aren't you glad that they did that?
And if you want ho ho ho. All right, so reefer cars. Old school wooden reefer. These were probably done away with in the 60s. These are ice bunkers too.
Yeah, the all Woodside freight cars, according to the FRA, they were outlawed in the late '60s. The FRA actually outlawed all wood cars in the late '60s.
Okay, so as far as your wood cars, there you go. Now this is what they would call a double sheaf. I can't remember if I grabbed a single sheaf box car. I don't think I did. I've got one somewhere. To give you an example of what a single sheaf would look like, is it would have the braces like the stock car has on the outside. That would be your single sheaf box car. And then, of course, the wooden ones would have been replaced with steel.
That would be in 1936.
So, and this one says it was built in 1947.
And the last ice bunker reefer was retired in 1971.
There you go. I
Also,
know
want to
PFE had a lot of these.
yeah, I also wanted to mention that in 1934, the Interstate Commerce Commission, or ICC, regulation number 201 came into effect, banning billboard advertisements on freight cars. So,
Okay. So, and that would be a lot of your beer cars like Schlitz,
yep,
Anheuser-Busch, PBR. Now, here I've got a mechanical reefer, and that's because you can see the air vents on this side. This side doesn't have them. And if I flip the car over, it's back on this side, but not on that side. So these would actually have the motor built inside. Some of the newer ones actually look like they have a platform on one end.
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
But
they
this was
actually have. Uh, well, the difference is the Trinity reefers that they use today have
mhm,
an external self-contained unit like you would see on a tractor trailer, and
right,
the unit on these were actually inside the box or the car itself.
right.
Mhm.
Now I've got this one outfitted with sound. So as it's running around the track, you'll hear the engine or the cooling engine kick on. And then, of course, it would kick off. It would wait a little bit and then kick back on. These the engines did not run 24/7 on the car. Once it got that temperature, down, it would cut off, and then once the temperature raised up, it would kick right back on. Kind of like central AC unit.
Yeah,
All
they
right,
call
Rick Bailey is finally here, and he missed his segment. Tisk,
Mm-hmm.
tisk, tisk.
but
Hey,
they called that. They, by the way, they called that cycle century that you're talking about.
Okay, there you go. So, and these are the different type of reefer cars that I have: 40 footers, 50 foot, and I do have some 60s. So double doors. Now, we were talking about billboards. Um, this is a leased car to Green Giant. So with it being leased, it's not like Green Giant's paying Green Giant to advertise. The cars that Sean was talking about would be a car that is not leased, and PBR or Pabst Blue Ribbon is paying, let's say Milwaukee to advertise their beer for them.
Correct.
So, all right, what you got over here, Ray?
I was surprised you don't have one of these.
Western Fun Run in '81.
From what
Sure
I
don't.
understand, this was a Southern Pacific prototype refrigerator car.
I don't think SP ever had them that long though.
Well, it
SP
isn't. It isn't really that much long. It's about 45, maybe 50 foot.
That's a 50 footer.
But what it is it's short.
Yeah. Oh wow. Well,
At one point in time I called it a coffin car because that's what it looked like. But no, apparently the Southern Pacific had messed around with these, or messed around with a prototype for this, and it never caught on. But yeah, this here it's just a convention car. But I've actually got another one that's very similar to this, painted up for another convention that the NMRA had. So. But that was in that box of stuff that I had acquired last year.
okay. That's cool. I've never seen any SP reefer cars or ice bunker reefers longer than 40, so that's new to me. So that's pretty neat. All right. Oh, I forgot about another reefer. Well, I don't know if you would consider it a reefer or not. I mean, it doesn't have a refrigeration unit, but it's called an insulated box car.
Ah, yes.
I thought you would like that one, Sean.
Oh yeah.
considering it's Conrail. And if Sparky was still here, I'm sure he would like that too.
It's funny because Conrail really had them, and they insulated those box cars, and they were made to transport beer. There was a brewery in New York that they were dedicated to.
Okay.
The brewery actually moved, and Conrail moved those those cars to go, with that brewery. But for the longest time, they were you could see these cars pulling beer out of New York.
Oh, see, I did not know that. I had no clue. And I guess because it's an insulated box car, its AAR code is a RBL. Is what I'm seeing. And Ray, since you got the list, I'll let you verify.
What was it?
Romeo Bravo Lima, RBL.
Yeah, give me a minute. I went ahead. I closed that back down, so give me a second.
Okay, well, when you get time. And Steve 87th does have a good point. Beer is not supposed to be iced.
According to this, RBLs were refrigerator cars, same as an RB, with liquid and ice. And the RBLs were actually built from 62 to 2007.
Let's see if I can see a build date on this one.
The original RBs were built from 1917 to 1958.
Okay.
RBTs were beverage cars.
This one says RBL.
Well,
this is a very, very nice car. This was a Walters. And I mean the detail as far as like the decals and stuff. And I know you can't really read it here, but I can get my magnifying glass out and I'm able to read everything. For a lot of the older cars, it's just all, together. So, all right, so that's all of the reefers I've got. I've got different types of box cars. And a lot of different ones. All right, let's go with the all-door. This is a Thrall box car, and it has several doors, and the doors are able to overlap each other. This would typically carry plywood and other types of lumber. And one of my things broke. I'm going to have to glue that back. But I think these are pretty neat how these work. And then that's what the ends look like. It's just a very, very neat setup. But I think that's really all the Thrall all doors. I think it was just literally lumber. Some of Rick's friends, or was his friends. I don't know if he's still in here or not. Train fan, that Conrail reefer was a Walters mainline. So, and yes, that Warehouser is also a Walters mainline too. And I guess we can continue on with Walters since I have quite a bit of Walters. This one says it was built in 41.
Okay.
But it's a steel box car.
Yep.
40-footer.
Yeah, that's what replaced the Woodside box cars.
Okay, so since this one was built in 41, it looks like it might have been rebuilt again in 69. Because sometimes you'll see the family drove in style. Rick is something else. Randall, this ain't even 10% of my box cars. But sometimes, okay, so I'm going to see if I can zoom in, see if it'll focus. But right under the Mopac logo, it says BLT 5-41, which is May of 1941. But if I slide over here, right under the XM, you see LR 7-69. And typically that is a rebuild, and they would put the location where it was rebuilt and the dates.
Yep.
Now, Northern Pacific was it a subsidy of Union Pacific after a certain point? That would have been in the 80s, right? Or was it Western Pacific? I think it was Western Pacific that was under UP.
Yeah, I know.
Northern Pacific might have merged with Burlington. I don't know. Does anybody know that?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Not 100% sure. I have you know what? I think Northern Pacific and Burlington and the Burlington route merged and became the Burlington Northern before it went ahead and merged with the Santa Fe.
Okay.
So it was the Northern Pacific or the Great Northern, either or, ended up merging with the Burlington and made the Burlington Northern.
Right. So I know the person who really knows the answer to that question is not here, and that is Steve Childers, because he grew up in Chicago and is a huge Burlington fan. I mean, that's his freak flag. Okay, so Randall Ellison says Northern Pacific is one of the roads that made up the Burlington Northern. Okay, so I knew it was one. It was either the NOPAC or the Westpac that was under UP at one point. So, now I've got another 40-foot boxcar, but this one is excessive height, which any boxcar that has excessive height would always have the white painted along the sides at the top. And excessive heights also did not have roof walks, which the roof walks were really only used back in the day before they had train brakes, and that's where your brakeman had to run from car to car to car and crank the handbrake on all the cars. So a lot of your old wooden box cars, that's why you would see the handbrake at the very top. Yep, that's an excessive height too.
Yep, this is a 40-footer with what they call the high cube, which is what you got.
Yes.
This
is a high cube.
Yep. The only difference is mine's Burlington Northern, and this is actually an old Lionel HO car. Believe it or not, Sean.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
This is a Bachman, an old Bachman.
Yeah, this here was actually made by Lionel and for HO scale. It was done back in the late 70s, early 80s, I think it was.
Oh, okay.
It's one of two that I had. I got rid of the other was a caboose, and that got destroyed.
Now I've got another high cube here. It's a 50-footer. And they called these paper box cars because they would carry rolls of paper from a paper mill. Or it would be delivered to a newspaper, some type of printing press, whether it's magazines, newspaper, publishers of some type of books. But that's what they would ship rolls of paper. That's a Schuylkill River Valley's John. I don't know if he's still here or not, but that's his railroad. That's his freak flag. The ump. And then I have another high cube. I'm going to pull this one out of the way since we're done talking about it. I think these are one of Sean's favorites too, but not the railroad, but the type of car.
Oh, yes. Yes.
So big that it barely fits in the camera.
What is it, 86 feet?
That's an 86-foot box car.
Yep.
Or otherwise known as a rolling warehouse.
Yes. That's true.
Now, they've got two different types. This is known as you could call it an 8 single door, but I was corrected. This is a 4-door unit. The other one I have has 2 doors in the center. What I thought was really cool about this one. Do what?
That's if they had 2 doors, it'd be a coupe.
Yeah. So this is a Canadian National, and I thought it was really cool that they had the English spelling on one side, and I flip it over, and it's got the French spelling on the other.
They
So I
did
thought
a-
that was pretty neat.
they did that a lot on their freight cars.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about these 86-foot box cars is that because these are called auto parts box cars, basically they transported auto parts to like GM, Ford, Chrysler. So there will be certain plants that would request the certain door design. Like I forget which one's which, but Ford wanted maybe the four doors and GM wanted two doors. So they
So ironically, the other one that I have, and I didn't grab it, it's a Santa Fe, and it's got the two doors in the middle, and it actually says Ford Motor Company at the bottom.
oh okay yeah.
So maybe this is a GM or Dodge Chrysler.
Yeah, I think it's GM then.
So I did not know that.
Yeah, and then when Conrail had a whole bunch of them, but when Norfolk Southern, I believe it was Norfolk Southern, actually took the remaining 86-foot box cars that were out there and they retrofitted them all back to being just a two door, and then in their shop and ended up selling some of them off to CSX or whatever have you. But there's still some in operation.
Right.
Yeah, I had to do the same thing, Cat Nuts. I've got this old model here. I was looking to see if it was done the same way as Jason's. It's not. This is an old model power, and of course, it's nowhere near prototypical. It's got Canadian National on both sides.
Well, I don't think they did it on all of them because I've got, and I would have to go out to the garage to go get them, or you might seen them on some of my videos in the past. I've got some Santa Fe's, box cars that will say, ship Santa Fe on one side, but the other side it says like the Texas Chief or the San Francisco Chief or the Chief. So I've got another auto parts box car because it says automobile. That's the only reason I know it's an auto parts box car.
Yeah, they were 60 foot before they went to 86 foot. So the
Right.
very first auto parts were shipped in 60-foot box cars, and then eventually
And
they went to the 86-foot box car for auto parts.
now it shows that this car was built in 46 and this one was built in 74. But this one actually was rebuilt in 67 in San Francisco. That's what the SF stands for. Um, so I mean, it's like they rebuilt it, and then I guess when they decided to decommission, they just decided, hey, let's just go big or go home.
Well, I
Now,
mean, they were still pretty useful for for small parts, because I ran into pictures where I don't know if it was a Conrail unit or I think it was an early Conrail, like in the 80s, where you would see 60-foot box cars coupled to 86-foot box cars transporting auto parts.
so Tim is saying this car would actually carry actual cars
Hmm.
before the auto racks did.
Yeah, the 50s.
Hmm.
So they would only be able to get what, two, maybe three vehicles in here.
You can actually find pictures online, like he's talking about, where they had docks, and I think like two or three cars were fit in there. But yeah, he's right. Before they made the auto racks, that's how they transported them.
Okay.
That's why they needed the double doors on them to get the cars out.
Well, and I know it's hard for y'all to see on camera, but this door here is actually aligned with the opposite door on the other side. This door is not. There's not a door here opposite of it. They're
Right.
offset. And of course, let me see if I can turn it slowly so that way y'all can tell. So, center door here. So there's not a door right here. That was opposite to that door. So the doors are offset. So that's interesting. And I guess that's maybe how they were able to drive the cars in at an angle maybe that last car to
Yeah.
get it positioned right. So now the cars flipped up on the end, got like 8 to 10 cars inside.
Yeah, I remember seeing pictures of something like that, but I'm not sure if they did it
Well,
with a particular car or not.
I don't think they did it in these 60 footers. I do know that there was an auto wreck that was called the Vertipack
Yes.
that was designed for the was it
Vega.
the Chevy Novas?
The
No,
Chevy
the
Vega.
Vega. Vega.
The Vega. Okay. And yeah, they could get a whole bunch more in there. So, and of course, I've only got 2 more box cars, different types. Everybody knows that one. I mean, you see these everywhere, and I still see these today. Actually, some of these are no longer our boxes. They have the reporting marks are BKTY, which I think is a company that Union Pacific owns. And I don't know what BKTY stands for as the reporting marks. And then, of course, I got another car that doesn't pay attention to rules from the FRA. So, and that would be my United States Army box car. Now, from my understanding, these would carry munitions.
Yeah, anything with the reporting mark of DDOX boxcar would carry different types of ammunitions, and those cars would be placed near the end of the train.
Now, these say USAX.
Okay, I'm not
Now, I know there's a Navy one too that's USNX.
right.
I don't think there's an Air Force one, which, I mean, you think about it, the Air Force came out of the Army, and it's like, the Marine Corps is part of the Navy. So, really, your Army and Navy were your only 2 types of cars besides the Department of Defense. But, I mean, these would carry anything and everything. These would typically carry anything military related.
Yep.
So, all right. Last group. Oh, nope. I forgot. I forgot about these 3. Oh. Express box cars. And I had to look this one up because this one did not have a build date on it. But this one and this one were built during the same time, and they were both built in 46, 7 of 46. And so these were not just strictly used for passenger, but if SP ran a train that was what they called it's a hot load, I think is what they called it. It was considered a passenger train that had no passenger cars because it was delivering goods to the towns at the depots. So a lot of your depots would have a little stub in siding that would back up to the depot itself, and that's where these cars were dropped off. It's kind of like your early days of UPS and FedEx, and a lot of the cars would also say Railway Express Agency or REA. Not all the railroads had that listed, but that's what these express box cars were. And SPs, they would have overnight on it. And of course, they did have some that were silver as well. And of course, I didn't know it at the time, but this is what Union Pacific's express box cars would look like. And they call it the Challenger Merchandise Service. So for my railroad, it's not prototypical to run these, but oh well. What can I do? So I might give them away. You never know. And this is a Bowser. I think these are just both Atherns. So Little tidbit on express box cars and their AAR reporting marks were BX, not XM. All right, last group. Covered hoppers. And I've got several different types here. I've got ACFs, FMCs, or Pullman standards because they look very similar. I've got some with leasing units and some that are actually railroad specific. And then I'm going to kind of show you what type of commodities would these carry. So that way, you know, if you're trying to run a grain train on your layout, when did TS go educations? What? I got to ignore Rick. I mean, because he can't even type. That means he's half awake over there.
Well, he doesn't have his hat on, I bet.
Wah wah. Okay, so your 2 bays, or that's actually a 3 bay, but your typical short 4 bay would carry heavier things like sand, for example. You had 2 different types of hatches. You had, you know, your center hatches on the top. Some of them had, you know, long hatches like that one. But because the bottom here has the slides, yeah, see, he really can't type. Look, I mean, look at this. Ray, that's got to be tree language. He's speaking in tree. So, but if it was chemicals, they wouldn't have sliding hatches like this on the bottom. They would actually have a pipe that would come out on both ends that they could hook a hose up to, and it would suck the chemicals out. This would be another one to carry some type of grain. It's got the sliding bins as well. But these could carry salt or sand. And of course, you're not going to put sand in anything this big because it's going to bust out. It's going to just cause it to bow and break in half. But this is a FMC one here, and it's another grain one. And a lot of your grain ones would have the big hatches like this. So that way, as it's loading, the train could slowly pull at 1 mile per hour instead of have to pull and spot it perfectly and pull up to the next one and spot it perfectly like this. So here the train would have to spot 5 times perfect. Here, not necessarily. I've even got one that's called a conversion. It's got both. Now, this is a leased unit to the Morton Salt Company.
That's probably an old Tyco unit.
You were exactly right. I don't know if you can see it or not, but right under that wheel,
Oh yeah,
it says Tyco. So Tyco was notorious about advertising cars.
Yes, that's why
Whether
as
they-
soon as you said it was a Morton Salt car, I kind of figured it was a Tyco
Well,
because they love doing billboard cars.
so I've got another one here. Now, Sean was saying earlier, billboards were banned, what, in the 40s, 50s?
billboard advertisements were banned in 1934.
1934. So the 30s. So why are these not billboards? Well, that's because these are actually leased units. So on this car here, the reporting marks is Union Pacific, but leased by CNH Sugar. So, and of course, I guess this one would carry sugar. because it's CNH.
Yeah, that looks like a high side covered hopper.
Let's see, who makes this one? It doesn't say if it's a Pullman or a FMC. I know it's not an ACF.
No, ACF don't have ribs on it.
Right, that's an ACF.
Yes.
Randall, I don't know if Athearn actually did Morton salt hoppers. I don't believe they did. Rick. Is Mr. Rogers.
So next up is Mr. Rogers, and he's going to talk about Arbor Day.
Arbor Day.
Hold on,
Come on, Rick. Don't play with me. All right. So I got another leased unit here. This is one of my new ones, ConAgra.
I love that car.
And I don't know what PTLX stands for. If you want to look it up, go ahead. But it's another one that's got the slot hatches.
BKTY, and that was that's Union Pacific, but there was a subsidiary of the Missouri, Kansas, and Texas.
The MKT.
Yep, the BKTY that you were talking about. That was part of the Missouri.
Okay.
Yeah, the Katy.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's a good question. Somebody's asking it, and I was curious myself. Is that a Pullman Standard 4740?
I'm
thinking it is. It doesn't say.
What does it say for cubic inch?
Hold on. Let's see if we can get it on camera. It'd be right under all the colors. I saw PS on it.
That's actually a Pullman Transport Leasing car, PTLX.
There you go. So it is.
Go.
Yep.
Wow.
This one, I don't know. But this is a gin car. It was leased to an actual gin company. And you rarely see these around today, but they're not leased to an actual, gin or a co-op per se. I'm trying to think. It's KWT is the railroad that owns these now. But I thought these were really cool to see, on people's layouts, are these co-ops and, gin company cars.
USLX was Evans Railcar Leasing.
Okay. And on here it says leased. Well, you can't really see it, but leased to Portland Gin Company right there.
There you go. Yeah.
So, I don't know who makes this one, but this thing's heavy. It is real heavy. I'm wondering if it's like one of Athearn's newer lines, maybe. I didn't get a box with it. All right, last one. And this is a Kansas City Southern, and this is one that hauls probably like plastic pellets or, something hazardous, because it doesn't have those hatches on the bottom. It's got the pipes that I was telling you about, where they would actually connect hoses to and suck the commodity out of it. So, and that's one way to know if your car is carrying possible hazmat material, because they're not going to have a hatch to let it just fall out, because then the particles get airborne. So that's how you can tell if you're getting hazmat or non-hazmat. So, or something that's not grain related. So that car would not be on a grain train. The rest of these could be. So, and that's all of the cars I have to show today. So, unless you want me to go out to the garage and get the other 1,500.
Yeah, 1,500.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Went from suck the blow.
So, Roy Eltham. I actually looked this up the other day because somebody asked me, what does FMC stand for? It stands for food, machinery, and chemical. So, food, machinery, and chemical company. So if you see an FMC car, it could carry anything. So anything you'd like to add, Sean? Anything I did not cover?
The only thing you didn't cover, and I try not to make too many people mad at me, but because I know we've been going on 2 hours, but is the auto rack.
Yes. Okay. So the auto rack, and that's because I only have two. They're kits, and they're not put together yet. And mine are open auto racks. And so I've got what's called a bi-level and a tri-level. And originally, auto racks did not have side panels or a roof on them. And that would have been what we originally said these carry automobiles, but they could only carry, 3 at a time.
Yeah.
And so we're talking,
We're
what,
talking
60s, 70s?
Yeah, 60s and 70s. Yep.
And so they would load them up in open auto racks. And then they finally put sides and covers on them because the cars that they were hauling were either getting vandalized
Yep.
or they were getting, just the rocks. Sometimes a rock would spit up and break a windshield or something, as the train's going through the tracks or down the tracks, I guess. My life, I did not really get into maintenance away on this segment. I mean, I can talk about it if you want me to, but I didn't get into the maintenance away cars. And of course, I didn't really get into passenger either.
Yeah. And Container Man was wondering where's your snowball car and your heavy duty
Center depressed flat. I do not have one. I do have a heavy duty flat though that has supposed to be a generator on it. It's just a standard flat car, but instead of 2 trucks with 2 axles, it's got 4 trucks with 2 axles on each truck.
I was going to say I do have a couple of those specialty type flat cars. I've got 2 of them that are 16 wheel. And I do. What's that?
That's nice. That's cool.
Yeah, and they're actually old Crown models on top of it. They're fairly heavy flat cars, but the center depressed flat car I don't actually have on the layout right now because the fact when you're running operations, there's no reporting marks on it yet, so I can't really run it until I put some reporting marks on the side of it.
The one I've got is Southern Pacific. Now, Container Man, the video I did for Nick, PGH Train Fanatic, I actually ran that heavy duty flat on that video, that challenge video. So if you want to see it, you're more than welcome to pop that video up. I do not have any center depressed flats, and those could contain anywhere from 4 trucks to 6 trucks. And the middle part of the car would actually have 4 trucks on it, and then it would have an extension that's articulated that would have a truck on it as well. As far as the schnabel, that thing is huge, and it would not be able to run in my helix on my layout. It would hit the center supports. And I think that's the issue Sparky ran into when he was running it. He could run it on the outside rail, but not the inside rail because the overhang is so much. Yes. There's your heavy duty flat. Or the bottom of it. Yep. That's it. And then, of course, I know we don't have trash trains here. I know they do up in Seattle. Typically, don't they take like containers and take the top off of them and fill it with trash and then put like a tarp on the top and then stack them again?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. Now, Anthony, I don't know, you might have missed it, but we did talk about tankers. Even though this one does vegetable oil, your LPG tankers are not that much different. So, Now, I will tell you, I have seen some tankers that had boxes on the bottom. I don't know if it's for refrigeration, maybe. I don't know. They didn't have any domes on the top. Everything was on the bottom. I don't have a model of one of those. I remember Anthony, a Georgia Sunbelt, made a comment on one of my videos, rail fanning videos, months ago on that. And I was like, man, that was new to me too. So, well, where did the machinery part go, Rick, including the fire truck division? Steve's talking about Rick's trees again, in case that they catch on fire. So, yeah, container man, that could be cryo on the tankers. It could be. The Jordan spreaders is not midnight yet. Oh man, this chat's just moving on me. Just moving.
I mean, there's
Hot oil cars. I see those come through all the time. Crude oil.
All kinds of different cars out there.
Yeah,
and I mean, this is just kind of.
We could spend probably 2 or 3 shows.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, if you really want to go into detailed specifics. I'm more or less just trying to show you that you don't need, and this includes myself. Let me just grab it. This and this farther down the line is not supposed to be on the same train. There we go. I mean, no. So it's not designed that way. This one, yes. There we go. And for y'all, that's my Dash 9. So a 1994 unit. That's the most modern unit that will be on my railroad that I own. Because I can't really say anything for my customers that send me locomotives that are SD Aces and ES44 ACs for me to put sound in. And of course, I have to test those on my layout to make sure they work. So, can't help it. And Steve 87th is one of those too. I still got to finish his last locomotive. I've done three out of the 4 he sent me. So, and I'm sure he's wanting to get those back pretty soon. So, okay, hold on. If you're doing a museum move, then anything goes.
You know, okay. I was going to ask you about something because
and of course he's got to walk away when he asks. So if we want to talk about snowplows, I can talk about snowplows. I mean, you only have a handful of those. If the snow wasn't real deep, they would use wedge plows, which a lot of railroads would put a wedge on the end of a gondola. The Cotton Belt actually had a wedge plow that they welded on a humpback tender from a steam locomotive they scrapped years ago. And that snowplow is actually sitting up in the Museum of Transportation in St. Louis, Missouri. All right, Anthony, take care, bud. And of course, if you had like heavy snowfall like you do up in the Sierra Nevadas, you would have the SP with rotary snowplows. And I think Union Pacific actually still runs one today for those heavy snowplows. So and of course, you could do what?
Go ahead. No, finish up. I'm sorry.
Oh, and then of course you can use the Jordan spreader, which is actually more designed to cut out your road bed on your track. They also use it for snow removal too. So, all right, what you got, Ray?
I'm guessing having one of these dudes pulling this wouldn't be a good idea, huh?
Yeah, probably not either. I thought you was going to pull out the DeWitt Clinton.
No, I pulled out the Lafayette. It's a little bit closer to home.
Oh, okay. Okay.
You know, at Baltimore and Ohio Railroad on the backside.
There you go. There you go.
It
So,
drives me crazy when I see my friends running like a modern day Dash 9 pulling a Woodside reefer, a billboard Woodside reefer with it. That would be another no.
well, I know you made a comment to me before when I used my SD40 5T2 and I was pulling stock cars with it. So, which would have been this locomotive pulling, well, let me get it under camera so you can see it. Pulling that. Which, yeah, these would typically be perfect behind your F units.
Right.
What about
Yep.
the high noses like a Jeep 7 or a SD9? Would that also fit that era too?
Yes.
So,
I mean, they were on their way out by that time, but yeah, they were still around then.
Yeah, that's one of the, Roy from the Container Man just brought something up, and I noticed the other day too. I've seen it a couple different times, and maybe Sean can answer this one. I kind of get a feeling I know what it is, but I've seen on Virtual Railfan where they've got a hopper car or a tank car sitting on a flat car with its trucks next to it. So that, in other words, the trucks aren't on the car. The car is actually sitting on the flat car, and its wheels and trucks are sitting next to it. Was that car like in an accident, or are they just moving it to a repair shop, or that's what
there could be some type of defect on the wheels or the braking system on that car. So the only way they can transport it is they have to take, they jack the car up and it literally just comes off of the trucks.
Right.
And then they set it on a flat car because they can't lead the wheels on it on a flat car because then it's too tall.
Right.
So, but yeah, a lot of times that happens, with accidents and whatnot.
Yep.
The only other thing they could do is if the bolster pin is not damaged, they can roll out another truck and a set of wheels. But if that bolster pin is damaged or if the braking system is damaged, then that's their only choice.
Right.
Now, I will tell you, there was a train that came through recently, and it went from Houston, Texas, to Cape Canaveral, Florida, and it's called the Space Shuttle train. And I wish someone made a model of it. I mean, that thing is cool, but it was basically box cars with like a frame welded around it, I guess for width clearance. And then there was depressed, heavy flat cars that was carrying space shuttle parts, and the containers were wide.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe those framed cars that you're talking about were actually buffer cars in between each of those.
They're buffers too.
Yes.
But they can also send a signal if the piping on those buffer cars get damaged. It's supposed to throw the train in emergency.
Yeah, I know I've seen that with the blade trains too. The first car on the blade train has that cage, right behind the locomotive. I guess that's your feeler car, so that they know wherever they're headed, they're going to be able to make the corner or make sure there isn't any type of brush or anything like that hanging over the rails that can damage those blades for the windmills, for the wind turbines.
Yeah.
Same type of deal. Makes sense.
Now, I have seen, and this will probably blow y'all's mind, the windmill blades take up 2 of those 80-something foot long flat cars.
Yeah, I've seen that on Virtual Railfan. And one of the things that I was wondering, and I was kind of watching it as they were going through Santa Fe Junction the other day, but that one car where I guess it's the spot that actually, the spot of the blade that actually connects to the motor. That looks like that car that actually pivots on the flat car.
Yeah,
The other
it does.
side stationary, but that one there will pivot as the car goes around the corner.
Yes.
Okay.
There was a industry that out of Little Rock at the port that used to make those windmill blades that they would ship up to Alaska, and they would actually ride train all the way to Seattle, and then load on a ferry, and then be shipped up to, I think it's Whittier or
Mhm.
Seward, one of the two ports in Alaska for the Alaska Railroad.
Yeah, I think it's
So
Whittier.
yeah, Container Man's saying two 89-foot flat cars. I mean, those blades are huge.
Yeah. Yeah, and then Steve P. 87 PSAP. Yeah, I've seen that on the Boeing trains too, where they've got the feeler gauges on the first car.
Yeah. So the only one, and the reason why the space shuttle train came all the way up to Arkansas, that was the same time that the hurricane was just, I can't remember which hurricane it was, but the one that was tearing Lake Charles, Louisiana up. So they had to run that train farther north, and it came through. I missed it, but another local rail fanner caught it, and I got to see it on his video. So, that's really all I've got as far as era specific stuff. Um, I plan on trying to get more locomotives and more rolling stock to kind of, as far as my purpose is to make it where it looks better, but that's going to take me a while. So, and then who knows, I might have my layout in this specific area at one time, and then I might change things up and run it in this area, later. So, but that requires having enough motor power and the rolling stock to meet customer demands. So,
Which is
but
one of the things that I'm still kind of. I mean, obviously, I don't have everything I want on here on this layout yet. As far as I mean, I've got the industries that I know I can model per se, but I'm just playing with the operations and knowing that I've got, industries that are in Harrisburg, industries that are in Richmond, and this railroad is just a bridge route for those. Those through freights, unit trains, basically. Even though I'm not in that era, I'm 1950 to 1970. You still had trains that served a specific purpose. Coal trains that came out of the mountains that fed the power plants and the steel mills to the east, south, and east. And they would run back and forth. That's all they did. They'd run south, run north, run empties north, full one south. So that's kind of what the railroad mimics as far as that goes. But there are still other industries, off layout industries that are seen. And I'm still running the stock cars. I still run the refrigerator cars. So, and I mean, I guess from what it sounds like I'm kind of like at the end of the era for the stock cars and the refrigerator cars, which is fine. That's where I want to be. So,
well, and you're a smaller gap than I am. I'm talking 1960s to 1996
right.
or 95. 95 is my cutoff year. So, I'm modeling a 35-year span. I mean, how
Right.
many different changes in the rules and stuff? What existed, what didn't exist.
And that was one of the neat things. And I don't remember. And I know somebody had mentioned it in the chat. You may be able to go back and find it. If not, like I said, I'll send you what I had. One of the reasons why Anthony Georgia Sunbelt got that chemical car, that one tank car that he won when I hit 300 subscribers, I knew that was outside of my era. That was an 89-foot. I think it was a propane. No, it wasn't a propane tank car. It was a chemical tank car of some sort. But I mean, it was a huge car. I knew that it was well outside my era. So it was
Right.
like I had no use for it. So, and that's the reason why the locomotives that you see running on here too are the same way. I try to stay to the early 70s. I don't try to go too far out of that. And that between this book that I was talking about yesterday on your other live stream, and the thing from the AAR that I found that tells me when locomotives and cars were built, what their eras were actually in. That was a huge help, and I could start weeding out some of the stuff that I had that I knew was outside that time frame. Outside of the neat little idiosyncrasies, like the Lafayette, that's something different. But
Well, see, for me, so for the longest, this was the oldest that I was running, not include my steamers, and I was going to run those for excursion. Was my
Right.
FTs to my SD45T2, which was wrecked in 1980. So I was going to do my cutoff at 1980. So that would have had me at what? 20-year span, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I participate in a contest for Jack, and I'm thinking, and he already said that the prize was going to be 2 covered hoppers. And I didn't know if anybody else was going to jump in on it or not. Well, I ended up being the only person who participated, and he decided to up the ante from 2 covered hoppers to this.
Oh.
And I was like, man, I'm not going to turn down a locomotive. I mean, I'd be dumb. I mean, especially since one, it's DCC, and 2, it's got sound already in it. It's not really the sound that I prefer, but it's got sound. I mean, that's a $250 locomotive, brand new.
Right.
So, yeah, I'm not going to turn that down. So that actually added 15 extra years on my layout. Just one locomotive.
There's another little piece of history.
Oh yeah.
Oh, is that what they call the bobber caboose?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, that's an old Tyco green box.
Oh, wow.
That was my dad's original set. That was the one I was telling you about, where I got the 2 flat cars and a gondola car, and it was an 040 steamer and this. So, yeah, I forgot what the...
Yeah, so let's see. Someone mentioned about, okay, so I have to build some cars for my railroads. Weapon cars, nuclear fuel cars, garbage containers, and then I still need beams for all the lumber. So, Steve, as far as your garbage containers, I think that's what, intermodal? I mean, you just cut the tops off and
Hey, James.
put tarp on it. Hey, James Galton popped in. Yes, we're still going, if you're wondering.
2.5 hours later.
Yeah, 2.5 hours later. And Midsummer Inscale is popping in too from Australia. Holy smokes.
Oh, my goodness.
And I still have 23 people on here watching us, which is insane.
I'm hoping I do this well next week.
Yeah. Well, I'm telling you, I'm not going to compete with Crossed Anchors and try to see who has the longest stream. Which I think GFW, didn't he do a 24-hour stream before?
Yeah. When he reached a certain amount of subscribers, they did a 24-hour. I can't believe they actually made it.
I'm too old for that.
I didn't get to participate in that. What did they do? Like, did they just run trains around their layout for 24 hours? I mean, what did they do?
Well, I think the whole entire 24 hours, they set up guests to be on in certain time slots.
Oh, okay.
So, and they would talk, and people talk about different things and their inputs and stuff like that. And then I think they were doing like every hour they were swapping out guests.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Sorry to hear that, James. Hopefully everything works out for you there, buddy.
Yeah. I totally understand with the family issues thing. I get it.
Uh-huh.
I really do. Well, guys, I'm thinking about wrapping it up. I did get the notice I don't have to go to work tomorrow, so that's awesome. another day off.
Lucky you. Of course,
I
I'll
know.
be right back here.
Well, okay, so when it comes to the weather, y'all up in the Northeast, Midwest, wherever you're at, up in the Northwest, y'all are used to these cold temperatures and snow. We're not.
Yeah.
Us Arkansans, Louisianans, Texans, Southern Mississippians, and Alabamians, we're not used to it. Our homes are not built for it. Our road crews are not, they don't have the materials needed to prepare for it. Um, I know some people are like, man, we've been -0 for months. And I'm like, yeah, you live in Montana and the Dakotas where every winter you're in sub-zero temperatures. And that's like, with Canadians, I know it gets cold there too, but y'all expect it every year. We don't.
Yeah.
And, it's been 3 years since we got a single inch of snow. And we had back-to-back storms, not including the first storm that was all ice and got dumped, right at a foot of snow.
Yep.
And we finally didn't get above freezing temperatures till yesterday. And I know a lot of the roads were starting to thaw out today, and it's not the main roads. It's like where the housing subdivisions and stuff are. They're still solid white, which is insane. But yeah. So they said the school district decided to close, and if the schools are closed, then where I work at, we're closed. And that's on our policy. So I get one more day. And I believe that.
Yeah.
Rory Hardwick, I totally believe that. My brother works for the highway department. He does southern or southeastern Arkansas, and their road crews were literally working 12 on, 12 off, just plowing.
I can remember years ago being in Charleston, South Carolina. Here it is. I'm from Maryland. And they were talking about, oh, yeah, they're going to get snow there. And it was all over their news, but they're going to get snow. They got 3 inches and it shut everything down for a week because, I mean, 3 inches. But the problem is it snowed 3 inches, but it never got above freezing. They don't have snow plows. They don't have salt trucks. They had no way of getting rid of it. I'm like, huh?
Yeah. Right. It was so bad, the Postal Service decided to shut down.
Yeah, that's when you know it's bad.
Yeah. Like on the news, USPS for the whole state of Arkansas will not be running until further notice. I'm like, what?
Whatever happened to the nor snow, nor sleet, nor freezing rain?
I know.
But see, here it is. You talk about the cold temperatures, and then we get over here. We start talking about when it starts hitting 110.
Yes.
It's like no, we don't deal with that.
and see, that's like us. We call Arkansas during the summertime Arkansana, because
Right.
it feels like you're in a sauna. You could go take a shower, dry off, and then as soon as you step outside, you felt like, damn, where did I put my towel? So I mean, yeah, it's the same way. You're used to what you're used to, and then when you get something that you're not used to, your body don't know how to react to it.
Right.
And then like road crews and stuff, they don't know how to handle it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we're going through down here. And I know Texas got it way worse than we did, because with them, the power outages and stuff was just so bad. Good night, Rick. Take care, bud. Take care of the little saplings.
Oh boy, he's never going to live that down.
No, he tried to, I guess, I don't know, diverge everybody with the Rico Suave, but that didn't work. But no, did you hear like what was happening down in Texas as far as like the houses and stuff getting all flooded and stuff?
Yeah.
They tell us to drip our pipes so our pipes don't freeze, which I ended up getting a frozen pipe and it busted, but it was a pipe I couldn't drip. Well, for them, the P traps in their, their sinks and stuff froze up because they lost power and lost heat.
Right.
And so they're still dripping. The sink ends up filling up and then water overflows.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. It's crazy. It is so crazy.
You know it's bad in the South when the Waffle House closes.
That too.
Yeah.
That's one of the last restaurants.
Oh man. So
Heath, you know as well. These STS guys never stay on topic.
nope.
Nope, that's one we're
We have a
sidetracked.
topic. Wait a minute, isn't that where the islands are? Oh, that's the tropics. I'm sorry.
Yeah. See, Possum Bio knows. He knows about that sauna weather. And I know where he's at. It's got to be worse. I think he's in southern Mississippi. So, Ray, I've got a really good view of that Tuscan Red GG1.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a car blocking your blackjack. So, well, y'all, I think I'm about to go ahead and wrap this up. We're already at 2 3/4 of an hour. So, Sean, you got anything else?
No, that was pretty cool going over all that stuff for everybody tonight.
I thought so. I thought it was very informative and, definitely, what people need to know. And if they choose to adopt it, great. And if they choose not, hey, that's fine too.
Yeah.
So we just want to make sure we got that information out there to where if you choose to, you can. So, Ray, you got anything else?
No, I'm good, man. I appreciate you bringing me in and having talking with Sean here, and I've learned something new. It's like I said, I knew that there was some of the things that I did that were a little outside the box, but it sounds like for the most part, believe it or not, but I'm on the right track. Pun intended.
What? Well, that must have been John that lined you up then, because we know Heath and Rick didn't do that. So, what do you got planned for next week?
I've got a couple of ideas. One of the things that's come up recently, actually, it's come up a few times. I'm actually going to maybe go ahead and discuss some of the DC wiring that I've done. Somebody was somewhat intrigued by what I did with the passenger terminal over at Beauville, or what will be the passenger terminal at Beauville, being able to stop the passenger trains in the same spot every time. So I'm going to kind of discuss what the differences between dead track and block track, which I know everybody is familiar with blocking. But I was going to go over that and then probably talk about some of the electric locomotives again, and we'll see what else comes up. But yeah, that's kind of what I've got on the agenda for next week.
Okay, that sounds like fun. Sounds like a good time. So, yeah, they're over here trying to give me a hard time saying because I didn't go over circus trains. Hey, that's Heath. You let Heath talk about that.
We'll let Heath.
I mean, he is the clown of the group. So, I'm sure he's got a red foam nose somewhere. He just hasn't showed it to us
sure.
yet. That and size 42 shoes.
Actually, Heath, I'm the one with the passenger trains.
I've got 4 sets. I ran one for Nancy. So I've got
1, 2, 3, 4. I think I've got like 12 sets. It's something like that, 8 or 10. But yeah.
Heath, Rick is your clown partner. He's the one that drives the clown car. You're just riding along.
Oh man.
Oh man.
Ugh.
A freak, a clown, a tree, a human, and not sure what Ray is.
Who was that? Oh, Chuck.
That's awesome.
No. uh,
Oh Lord, here we go. Look at
I'm the
Steve.
sound effects guy.
Where's that want?
Oh, yeah, me.
That one kills me every time. Okay, James says he's got 30 ore cars.
Or what?
I mean, an ore car is what, a short cover
It's
or a
just for a
short
hopper
open
car.
hopper?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a hopper car.
Yeah.
So
Don't say
I
that.
think
to
the one that, I mean, there's so many out there that we really didn't go into full details. But your railroad would have to be not just era specific, but industrial specific.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I just kind of wanted to go over some generalities.
Yeah. Well, you talk about getting general or going into specifics. You get into the iron industry, and you've got the work or the slide cars and the oh, what the heck, the hot metal cars, the flask cars.
Yeah, they had to have a gondola between each one.
Yeah, because of the heat.
Yeah. So
So,
your gondolas are buffers.
Yeah. So it's and for weight too. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and of course passenger. I mean, that's a whole different animal.
Yeah, passenger cars, because there's so many different styles, and it's, trust me, when I was going through trying to figure out what I had for the passenger car, and I could even, if everybody is really interested, the torpedo cars, that's what I was thinking of. Yeah, the Bawa cars, the torpedo cars, the slide cars, but the passenger cars, because of the fact that I've got quite a few different styles, I could even do that next week if you wanted me to, Jason. I mean, I could run over those for a little bit.
Sure. We could do a continuation of passenger.
The REAs and the baggage cars and things of that nature. But yeah.
Of course, Container Man's talking about the Coke car, which is part of the iron industry, and here you got Heath popping in with Pepsi.
Well, I'm surprised Heath hasn't mentioned hot dogs yet. Every live show, he likes to mention hot dogs.
That or a cereal, a soup. Hot dogs or a hoagie.
Yes.
No, I finished off a box of Raisin Bran. I guess that makes me a serial killer.
Yep, it sure does. Did they have Mo and Curly cars too, James? So for Possum Bayou, or Rusty, since his main industry is a paper mill, wood chip cars would definitely be delivering, your commodity because they would use wood chips, or pulpwood. You could do pulpwood too.
Slurry cars. Yeah, I think the slurry cars came from the paper plants. The clay that they carry clay slurry.
Yep, that too. And then your outgoing. What did I do with that box card?
Yeah, your paper box cars.
Yep. There you go, John. Schuylkill River Valley. The ump
There's
card.
the ump. You're out. No, that's the wrong type of ump.
Yep. So, but that's a paper box card. Which I have a cotton belt one too, but I wanted to show off the ump one.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was cool. Andrew left before we could talk about hot dogs. You should have asked earlier, Heath.
My main industry is people with cars.
Here we go.
Human.
There you go.
Oh my god.
Hey, John, I saw a 2-pack on eBay the other day. If you ain't got them.
Oh boy.
And of course, we didn't talk about this type of car.
Oh. Oh boy.
Now, John, 2618, when have you ever known me to be on time or off time? And see, Ray has to walk away on that one.
No, I just happened to think about something else today. We were talking about tank cars. Of course, I don't have these on the layout anymore because, well, you want to talk about old era?
Is that another one of those pickle cars?
No, that's a tank car.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
That was from like the late 1800s is what they used to carry water, from from spas and stuff. But this one here is the one that got me.
I can't see what.
It's Overland Oil and Transportation Company. Okay, it's a normal. It's a HO scale tank car, but you got the 6 dome. It's like, what the heck? I don't know. I think that this was used on some of the short lines or something. I don't know. It was one of these little oddities that my father picked up years ago. But yeah, I forgot about those two.
Wouldn't know. All right. Well, it's 2:50.
It was moving for an hour and a half, Heath. I figured it was time to put it to bed.
So for y'all that are still sticking around, the 19 of you that try to keep me going, why don't you go ahead and promote your channels? If you got like any contests and stuff coming up, let us know. Or if you got something cool you want to share, go ahead and put it up there. And I'm going to go ahead and kill it here in about a minute or two. So, Ray, are you having fun moving your stuff around? Are you trying to appease Heath because he wants to see the blackjack?
Wait a minute.
So Sean, do you have a GG1?
Yes, I do.
Do you have the Conrail Bicentennial?
No, I don't have. I have the.
Oh, Heath has got something you don't have. Oh, we're going to have to give Dakman hell now. So, all right, y'all. Well, I appreciate it. Y'all have a good night. Take care. Well, I guess midsummer, it's daytime for you, so have a good day for you.
It's actually in the future, so we already know everything's good.
Oh, share me the lottery numbers so that way I can win. All right, y'all. Well, y'all take care. Be safe out there, and I wish y'all happy railroading.
See you guys.
See y'all later.
We'll see.